Hello and welcome to a lesson on the product property of exponents. Let's get started with a little warm-up. So how many z's are in each expression? So the first one, z, 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 z. The second one, z to the seventh. And the third, Zany Zoe eats pizza, zucchini, and Zeppi's Italian ice with lemon zest. So go ahead and pause, answer how many sevens are in each expression, and then when you're ready, press play again. Okay, so for this first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 z's. For this one, z to the seventh is the same as z times z times z 7 times, so there would be a total of 7 z's. Zany Zoe eats pizza, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 z's in that phrase. Okay, so the goal for today, so the GVC, is I can simplify, rewrite, and solve algebraic expressions and equations. Our learning targets for today, so by the end of this lesson, you should be able to label the parts of an exponential expression and use the product property of exponents. Who uses this crap anyway? So biologists are a type of scientists who study life, and they use exponents a lot when looking at different types of growths of populations, whether that be bacteria or flowers or animals. And so exponents play an important role in their work. Time for the notes. Make sure this is written in your notebooks. Okay, so these are the different parts of an exponential term. So this first part here, the number that's hanging out in front of the variable, we call the coefficient. And let me type that because that's going to be better than my handwriting. The coefficient. So that's a fancy term that we use in math. That means the number before a variable. So what the multiplier is, the coefficient. This next one in blue we refer to as the base. So for today's lesson, the variable is going to be the base. Sometimes a number can be the base, but to keep things simple, in this case the variable will be the base. And then lastly, the small number up top is the exponent. So we've got the coefficient, the base, and the exponent. Go ahead and pause until you have all this written down and then press play again. Okay, so for this first one, you don't have to write anything down. I just want you to watch what I am doing. So I need to figure out what part is the coefficient, which part is the base, and the exponent. So the coefficient, remember, is the number before the variable. In this case, it's a 2. The base is what is connected to the exponent, which is an r. And the exponent is the small number, which is a 3. Okay, let's do some of these together. Okay, so go ahead and copy this first one down, 4k squared. The coefficient is the big number. The base would be k. And the exponent would be 2. These next two are a little trickier. Okay, so the coefficient, do we have a big number in front of the variable? Yep, it's a 2. Do we have a variable? Yep, it's an a. However, when we look, do we see an exponent right there? We do not. Now, in the case of exponents, if we don't see one, it's an invisible 1. So the exponent in this case would be 1. It's not a 0, it's a 1. And we'll get into that a little bit later in a future lesson. Okay, for this next one, it's a similar thing. Do we have a coefficient in front of this m? We don't. So in that case, once again, it's an invisible 1 because 1 times any number we'll keep it that same number. And mathematicians are lazy and we don't like to write the number 1 if we don't have to. So we made up these silly rules that if 1 is the exponent or the coefficient, we don't have to write it. Just to confuse you guys, that's really the only reason, and we're super lazy. But for a coefficient for this one, it's 1, the base is m, and the exponent is always going to be the small number, which is 3. So remember, if we don't see an exponent or we don't see a coefficient, it's 1. Okay, on your own, go ahead and pause, do this one on your own, and then when you're ready, press play. So for this one, the coefficient is 9, the base is x, and the exponent is 5. So that's the first part of our lesson. That's our first learning target. Can you just tell me what the coefficient, base, and exponent are in an exponential expression? Now we're going to get super fun. So once again, don't write anything down. I just want you to watch. So we're going to be talking about what happens when we multiply two exponential terms. So the first thing we do is we look at our coefficients and we multiply them. So here I've got a coefficient of 3 and a coefficient of 4. So when I multiply 3 times 4, that gives me 12. So 12 is what I write down. Next, I look at what my bases are. Here, they've got the same base, m. So I'm going to write down m. Then I look at the exponents. So remember, if there's no exponent written, it's a 1. So I'm going to put a 1 there just so I can remember that there's a 1. And to figure out what the new exponent is, I add my exponents. So 1 plus 4 gives me 5. So my answer would be 12m to the 5. So with exponents, m to the 4 is just a faster way of writing m times m times m times m. Here I've just got 1m. So really this is 3 times 4 times m. So once again, 3 times 4 gives me 12, and then if I count the total number of m's, that's 5. So instead of writing 12 I'm going to write 12m to the 5th. Okay, let's look at this next one. So first I multiply my coefficients. 2 times 4, that gives me 8. Then I write my first base. The first base I have is x. Okay, so if there's no number here, it's a 1. So I've got a 1 here and a 3 here. So 1 plus 3, I'm only looking at the exponents that have a base of x, is 4. Then I write my next base, which is y. My exponents are 4 and 2. 4 plus 2 is 6. So my final answer is 8x to the 4th, y to the 6th. Guided practice. Okay, so go ahead and we're going to look at this problem first. So write it down. 2n squared times n cubed. You can also read that as 2n to the 2nd power times n to the 3rd power. Okay, so first I want to multiply my coefficients. So this one's a 2. Here it's invisible, but my invisible number here is a 1. So 2 times 1 gives me 2. Then I look at my base is n, and I add my exponent. So 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay, next I have 4x times 4x squared times 3x cubed. So I start by doing 4 times 4 times 3, which I believe gives me 48, but I'm going to double check that. Yep, so that gives me 48. Always use a calculator if you aren't super sure with your multiplication. I'd rather have you get it right with a calculator instead of wrong with your brain. Okay, my base is x, so I'm going to write down x. Okay, here it's an invisible 1, so I'm going to do 1 plus 2 plus 3, which gives me 6. Okay, let's do this third one. So I've got 2u to the 4th v to the 4th times 4u to the 2nd. So what do I need to do first? Good, I multiply my coefficients. 2 times 4 gives me 8. And then which variable should I write first? U comes next, so I'm going to write U. So I've got 4 here and 2 here. 4 plus 2 is 6. Now the tricky part about this one is now next I've got a V. And so I have a V here, but I don't have a V over here, which makes it really easy. 4 plus nothing gives me 4. So it's 8u to the 6th, v to the 4th. So it's important here not to get confused and put a v to the first. That 1 only appears if the variable is written. If there's no variable written, we don't do that. I know for some of us that makes a lot of sense. For others of us, we get kind of confused there. So if there's no variable here, there's no v, we just keep it v to the 4th. We don't have to do anything fancy. Okay, go ahead and try these two on your own, and then when you're ready, press play. Okay, so for this first one, remember we've got our invisible 1. So 3 times 3 times 2 gives me 18x. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 3 is 8. This one, 3 times 2 is 6. And I've got a b. 1 plus 3 is 4. A, 2 plus 2 is 4. If you decided to write this one as 6, a to the 4th, b to the 4th, that would also be correct. The order of the variables doesn't really matter as long as the exponents match. So you always want your coefficient first, and then you want to make sure your base and the exponent stay together, but otherwise I'm not going to be too picky about the order. Okay, so today's assignment, on version 1 there's up to 2 variables like we did in our lesson today. On version 2 there are a couple problems that have 3 variables, so instead of just a and b, it'd be a, b, and c. So go ahead and pick the assignment you want to do and go ahead.